So yes, generating profit with purpose. Just to give those that don't know me a quick background, I've got a small business called Collaborent. I've trained with the B Lab team, which is a charity that really manages and runs the B Corp movement. So I'm now considered to be a B leader. I help businesses, generally speaking, the work that I do is in this space of helping businesses to become more purposeful and have more positive and social impact. I help charities to become more enterprising, but importantly, understand the value of what they've got to offer local businesses. So they're not just going for asks. And I also support social enterprise. We'll talk about that in a tick. And I'm really keen on the space that Paul Roberts has just talked about around how we can use all of this to create a much more inclusive economy, have a stronger and fairer economy locally. Paul also referenced OSEP. OSEP was an informal partnership that came together between the two universities that they were keen to push out into the wider community support for social enterprise. So for quite a number of years now, I've been supporting that. Last year, it set itself up as a social enterprise, a community interest company, and it won some funding through the LEP to deliver support for a program, a European funded program. And my trusted assistant or good friend, Rosie, should be posting fairly soon a link to the Escalate program. The Escalate program is specifically funded for purposeful businesses, enterprising charities, social enterprise, so pretty much organisations in this space. Lots of different support, including grants, so follow that link and talk to any of us about that. I'm a member of Social Enterprise UK. I'm not a social enterprise, but I'm a supporter member, and Oxfordshire is renowned as a social enterprise county, and I represent it within a Social Enterprise UK Places programme, which really brings hotspots of social enterprise together across the country. I volunteer to help run the Robin Network, which has been around for over 10 years now, bringing organisations together across the sector to share skills and resources. And I am a very proud member, honestly, of B4. I've been working with Richard and his team to help develop the Nexus programme, and I'm involved in Oxfordshire Voice. And I know it sounds a bit, I don't know, but I really do think the B4 network is a fantastic platform to really promote the sort of stuff that we're talking about today. And it's tremendous to hear so many references to business as a force for good and the ways in which business can really help to make a better place for us all in Oxfordshire. So that's a little bit of background. And I've also written various articles on these sorts of things in the B4 magazine. There's something coming out actually in the one that's going to immediately follow this, and there was one on B Corp recently. So that's me. I'd just like to start actually by talking a little bit about corporate social responsibility, or CSR, and the problem I have with it, or problems. Now, I think the first thing to say is that it's not new. I think, going back to the late 1800s, organisations, actually, it was a natural way of doing business, really embedding the sorts of thing we're talking about within businesses to be part of local communities. I think we've gone through a lot since then, certainly more latterly. If you look at the history of all this stuff, I think there's been a lot of talk about capitalism, and whilst in some cases and in some ways it works, it's definitely not working the way it really should. And I think that's only really happened over a relatively recent time. But I think we're getting back to the way business should be run, which we'll talk about in a second. The other thing that has always frustrated me, and I have to say I'm going to stop using this slide fairly soon, but for the last few years I've been using this slide and saying that, I think one of my frustrations is CSR, or corporate social responsibility, is misunderstood, it's underutilised. But I have to say this with a qualification. So I think everybody understands that the ways businesses engage in its community, the way it supports charity, is important. It really is important. But that's often the first reference people make to CSR, sometimes the only reference. Clearly, over the last few years, we've all become much more aware of the impact business has on the environment and the positive things it can do. And again, I think people often think that those two areas are where CSR starts and stops. More recently, I'm pleased to say that the likes of the ways businesses look after their workforce and the workplace, has become important, but also the way in which marketplace can be used. So using the supply chain to have more positive effect. Now, as I say, I think we're coming to a space where people start to recognise this, but up until recently, it was just those first two elements. And don't get me wrong, they are really, really important, particularly to the voluntary sector, but it's not where it starts. Anyway, we'll move on from this. The other thing to say is that, and just I suppose to put pay to what I said at the beginning, I think if it's done properly and these things are embedded in the right way within organisations, it can be a tremendously powerful thing. So I'm not against corporate social responsibility, but it's the perception and the manner in which it's actually utilised. What we're going to be talking about here, though, in my view, is beyond CSR. It's well beyond CSR. I do sometimes refer to it as CSR on steroids, but I think it's far more than that. So we're going to have a look at an introduction to the B Corp movement, just a whistle-stop tour to give you a feel of what it is and how you can find out more. So what is a B Corp? Now, first of all, a caveat. The B Corp movement is very strict about the use of its logos. It doesn't like reference to it or the use of it and people claiming stuff incorrectly. So I am not a B Corp, or Collaborent isn't a B Corp, but I am in the process of going through their assessment, which you'll see in a sec. And it's my intention to be a B Corp, but I'm not a B Corp. There's also a poll that I put together. So if you don't mind, whilst you're listening, just popping across, have a look at the poll. It's a simple question. It would just be good to get a feel from everybody in terms of their awareness of the B Corp movement. So in simple terms, B Corp really is right behind this whole principle that we've been hearing a lot about today of shifting business from purely shareholder value, maximizing shareholder value and making money, across to stakeholder value, really finding ways to be able to embed that within businesses, but also to provide some form of certification and authenticity of that. So it is for it's for profit businesses. You can be a social enterprise and be a B Corp, but it's not for charities. There is a scoring process which we'll come on to, so you need to attain a certain level, and you also need to change your governing documents to reflect the fact that you are committed to those things for broader stakeholders as well as shareholders. And then the B Lab team certify you. Now on the bottom there are a few numbers. You'll see some numbers dotted through these slides. I have to say that the sands are shifting all the time. The movement is growing. So yeah, suffice to say, it's a growing. There's more numbers there. So in general, certified B Corps are businesses that balance profit and purpose, and they are legally obligated to consider the decisions that they make and the way they run their business. It's global, as we've said before, and growing. Yeah, and it's a community of businesses that want to be the best for the world. Launched in the UK a few years ago, and I've been working with them since to support them. There's some names you may recognise there, the likes of Ben and Jerry's. Locally, the Myers-Briggs company, personality profiling company, and much more, have a base in Oxford, and they're a B Corp. We had a great event to celebrate that a year or so ago. Ella's Kitchen, I'm a granddad, so I know about these things, baby food. Anyhow, names that you'll recognise, and a growing number. You heard before, perhaps, Gareth Dinage of C Court. They're just going through the process, and they're set to be, at least he thinks and hopes, the highest scoring B Corp in that sector globally, which is fantastic. So why should you become a B Corp? Why would might you want to become a B Corp? Well, I think we all understand now that people want to work for, buy from, and even invest in businesses that are operating in an appropriate way. But there needs to be a way of actually making sure that that is authentic, and B Corp is one of the ways of doing that. And it was interesting to listen again to what Gareth said about particularly businesses that have achieved a certain level of environmental sustainability, and how people are looking to invest in them. They're performing on the stock market far better than others. yeah, again, more of the same reasons why. I think the other thing that's really interesting is I think increasingly suppliers are looking to be more choosy. I certainly have only got a modest business, but I'm careful who I do business with. I only want to sell to organisations like this. So it's not just customers. I think it's the other end as well. And as I say, there's increasing evidence. Interestingly, I'm looking forward to hearing from Colin Mayer tomorrow morning. Worth a listen. I heard him speak at the Be Inspired event last year. I'll talk about a bit more about that in a second. But Side Business School has worked with Harvard Business Review and Ernst Young, and there's a lot more evidence now to demonstrate that being a purposeful business not only makes you more successful, attracts the right sort of people, you tend to be more innovative. And more information there from business in the community as well. More stats from business in the community. So yeah, I think if you get going back to the title of this, if you get the purpose right, the profits will follow. And as Steve Cook said earlier today, and I absolutely agree with him, if you're not doing this stuff, you probably won't be as successful and you won't survive. I mean, I'd like to think that people won't be doing it for that reason, but that's most definitely consideration. So how to become a B Corp? Now, when I first came across this movement, I was a little bit cynical, I have to say. I've come across certification bodies in the past and organisations like this, and it worries me that organisations sometimes focus on generating income through the certification process. But what I really like about this movement is, and this is the point, this is an online tool that's absolutely free for you to use. I'll stick the link in the chat. I often say to businesses, if you just want something that's going to help you build a better business, then start here, or at least have a look at this. As we'll see in a minute, it looks at various elements of your business that you might not have ever considered. So there's a free online tool. It asks various questions in different areas of the business. If you go back to the CSR elements that I talked about before, they sort of map to those. As well as those 4 elements, there's also the one around governance. So the way in which your business is managed and owned. Interestingly, I'm frustrated that I'm delivering this because, as I said earlier, Alex is delivering a really interesting presentation about employee-owned businesses on the other channel. So I'm looking forward, hoping I can see that a bit later. But finally, on the bottom of this, you'll see there's effectively 2 perspectives as well. So this assessment tool looks at the impact business model. So in other words, what the business is set up to do. So if you're a recycling business, for instance, it enables you to measure and monitor that, and the impact that you're making through your actual business. And then the other perspective is the operational impact. So effectively the side effects of what you're doing. So clearly things like the carbon footprint and so forth. A little bit more granular, I won't go into details, but it gives you a feel for the sorts of subtopics the questions are based on as you go through the assessment. Increasingly, sustainable development goals are being pushed forward. For those of you that are not aware, haven't got time now, worth looking up. Globally, these are accepted, and the B Corp movement has been working to align that through the assessment as well. So that's a good development. I'm not alone. So I am a B leader, as I've said. We have other B leaders locally, and just in case any other B leaders are listening, I'm sorry if I've left you out. We've got a few. You can find out more through the website, but you'll be hearing more from us fairly soon. We're bringing together what they call a B local group, initially working with existing B Corps, but us B leaders as well. And I'll put the contact details for Sally, Sophie and Talia in the chat box as well. So yeah, more to come. As I've sort of intimated, it is a community. As I mentioned before, I went to an event last year with Paul Mabbott of Jennings, and we were blown away, really. To be in a theatre full of 600 like-minded people that are absolutely focused on this topic was just quite emotional, I have to say. So being part of this community is a wonderful thing. I just wanted to finish off actually with a slide just to put this into the context of the stuff we talked about locally and Paul as well. Generally speaking, I think now is the time for this sort of stuff. Generally speaking, I think the traditional view, if you look at the green side of this continuum, I think generally speaking, people accept that charities, community groups and public sector are responsible for addressing those social and environmental issues, where whilst at the same time at the other end, private sector is driving the economy and generating income. And what we've been seeing, as we all know, and we've been talking about today, is a shift. There's less funding for those organisations on the left. They're having to be more enterprising. They're having to generate more income. And at the same time, for different reasons, private sector is either feeling an obligation or a part of the responsibility to address those issues as well. And also, I have to say, commercial opportunity to do that. And in that space in the middle, which is where I love to dwell, I think we've got fantastic opportunities to address some of the challenges that we're facing locally. And the B Corp movement is a wonderful way to do that.